El problema es, pues, no tienen para comer y lo único que se les ocurre a las chicas es lo más fácil, prostitución.
We must take an active stand against the discrimination and exploitation of women around the world.
They only work in the house and their parents get them married very young.
We don't have equal pay. We don't have equal representation in the workforce.
This is a responsibility for us all because a better woman is just a better society.
I believe economic empowerment for women is important because we live in a society where everyone should be equal and everyone should be seen as equal.
It doesn't matter what background you're from, what language you speak, what your religion is.
The idea of economic empowerment is synonymous with the idea of improving their lives.
If I'm empowered, I'll become strong and I'll be able to fight for women's rights in Uganda.
I see something in the youth, and if you can make a difference just with that one person, that's what really counts.
I believe the youth can help with women empowerment.
In order for this to happen by 2030,
young people should be part of it. I think we should be the ones voicing out, saying out what is supposed to be done.
I want to grow up and work in a world where women aren't afraid to confront men in the workplace.
When I grow up, I want to be paid as same as the woman.
quand je serai grande, le genre de monde dans lequel j'aimerais vivre, ce serait un monde où tout le monde pourrait vivre ensemble.
I'm Nicholas Kristof from the New York Times. I'd like to welcome all of you today. It's one of those days in New York with light traffic. Not much happening today, aside from the UN activities, the Pope's visit, Xi Jinping's state visit, John Boehner's resignation. It was really very quiet news day. And so we really appreciate everybody coming out to this event, which promises to be a tremendous look at empowering women. I'd like to thank the hosts of this event, the UK Department for International Development, UN Women, and CARE for this. And for our online audience, you can also take part. We're going to be celebrating the SDGs, but also, this sometimes can promise to be sort of a talk fest. And we want to go beyond that with actually engaging in an affirmation and a call to action, and there'll be ways for you participating online to do that on the site that you're watching. That's empowerwomen.org/SDG. And if you're tweeting, please use that hashtag, #EmpowerWomen. This is an issue that I become engaged in basically for two reasons. First, that it seemed to me that this wasn't just about a matter of equity or social justice, but also this is where you get the leverage to fight poverty, to address so many other issues we see around the world. And second, that it may seem odd to have a man talking about the importance of empowering women, but the truth is that this isn't just a women's issue. And if it's just women talking about it, then the issue risks being marginalized unfairly. This is an issue, an economic issue, a human rights issue that concerns absolutely everybody. And so to offer our first keynote, I'm really pleased to call on a representative of one of the hosts. That's the head of DFID, the UK Secretary of State for International Development, Justine Greening. She has been passionate about the rights of women and girls, about education, about FGM, about child marriage, and about bringing those educated girls into the formal labor force and seeing these virtuous cycles unfold. So with that, Justine Greening. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, and welcome to all of you. Thanks for coming to this event that we're co-hosting with UN Women, with CARE, and I know the government of Ethiopia has also played a role in helping to put this event on this evening. We're going to be talking about women's economic empowerment, and I think it's incredibly important because for far too long We've seen girls and women essentially airbrushed out of the picture and invisible outside the home. And I think it's been an exclusion for girls and women that's not just been about having a job or livelihoods. It's gone beyond that. It's been exclusion from owning land, from registering a business, from even accessing and having a bank account. And in fact, if we look at the scale of the challenge, in 35 countries, female surviving spouses don't even have the same inheritance rights as their male counterparts. In fact, in 17 countries, husbands can actually legally prevent their wives from working. And we know that these things really, really matter, because if we're going to win the battle for improving the prospects for women and girls and women's rights, if you can't own land, if you can't even set up a bank account, or if in the 21st century you can't even own a mobile phone, then the reality is you end up totally reliant on someone else for everything that you need in your day-to-day life. On the flip side, if we can break these chains of dependency, then I believe that girls and women will do the rest for themselves. They just need to be given the chance, the ability, and the opportunity. I think that independent women and girls are going to seize that opportunity to support themselves through the dignity of working. They're going to seize the opportunity to control their own future and to have a voice in their community in a way that perhaps they haven't had the chance in the past. And for me, this is very much a matter of universal, basic human rights, women's economic empowerment. It's the right thing to do. But I also firmly believe that girls and women are one of the best, one of the smartest development investments that we can make. We know that when girls stay in school for just one extra year of primary school, that can boost their eventual wages by 10 to 20%. We know that when women get extra earnings, they will then reinvest that back in their families, back in their communities. So it's a double win for development. But when we have a world where women and girls are losing out, therefore it means that we're all losing out. And in fact, the World Bank did some research that shows that half of women's productive potential globally is completely underutilized. And if you compare that to men, for men it was just a fifth. So that's the challenge, but we are moving forward. And I think today we've had an amazing day where for the first time, so many of these things that we have worked on and talked about internationally and in countries are now for the first time formally part of the global goals and Global Goal 5. And as Ban Ki-moon called it, it's the to-do list, but this is now to do properly for the first time. And I think that's been an amazing day. And those global goals include some absolutely vital targets that I know many of us here have worked long and hard on increasing women's rights to land and financial services, achieving equal pay for equal work, reducing the burden of unpaid care and domestic work on women. And today, it's about how we can now turn those ambitions into reality. If we're going to do that, then we all have to up our game. OECD data at the moment shows that around 20% of development spend, of aid, that goes into economic and productive sectors has a focus on gender equality. That needs to rise. And we urgently need to bring more finances to invest in gender equality more broadly, not just in terms of international development investment, but financing from the private sector, from philanthropists, from domestic resource mobilization, to make sure that the level of investment that we need to get the change that we want is there. The UK is going to absolutely continue to play our part. We championed long and hard the parts of the global goals that we're so delighted to see that are in Global Goal 5. And we've already done so much in this whole area. We've provided around 35 million women with access to financial services such as savings, credit and insurance just over the last 5 years alone. And we're helping 2.5 million women finally get land and property rights, and with some groundbreaking projects in places like Rwanda. But we're going to do much, much more over the next few years, because we know that for women starting their own business, they need more than microfinance. In Nepal, around 3.2 million women are cut off because they're living somewhere that is remote. It is perhaps hours away from the nearest all-weather road. And in fact, more than 1 million women in somewhere like Nepal have never been connected to any road. And that really matters, because if we're going to see women able to access opportunities, they physically, literally need to be able to get to them if they're going to do it. So I can announce today that the UK is going to be extending work that we've been doing in West Nepal for building rural roads and bridges in some of the most remote areas. And as a result, by 2019, more than 1 million girls and women are going to be connected to markets where they can go and sell their goods. They're going to be connected to the hospitals where they can give birth safely for the first time. And they're going to be connected to the schools where their children need to go and learn. And the women themselves are going to be building and maintaining the roads. And this extension of a scheme that we've learnt so much from doing so far is going to create now more than 3,400 jobs for women every year for the next 4 years. We also recognise that there's a real need for better data on the kinds of discrimination that women in business face, and better evidence then of what's the best way to tackle it. So I'm also today announcing a £1 million investment for the World Bank and for the IFC to start developing those new ways and new approaches to looking at how we can tackle the regulations and the systems that discriminate against women, whether it's issues of unequal inheritance rights, or indeed even tax breaks that only apply to men. We're going to be investing in helping to understand how to remove those barriers. But also, finally, we're going to contribute £800,000 to the World Bank's Women, Business and Law Survey, which tracks and measures those sorts of economic laws and regulations that make it harder for women to work. So we're going to be building the evidence, and we're going to be investing in programs that we know, like the one in Nepal, that can connect up women to the assets that they miss, but also help them have a chance of livelihoods to be independent financially. Those projects, along with the work that so many other people in this room are doing, I think are going to make a huge difference over the next 15 years. I think today was an incredible day for girls and women. I think the ability to have got Global Goal 5 gives us a platform for momentum on improving the prospects for girls and women that we've never had before in quite such a clear-cut, powerful way. The final thing I really want to say is that although I stand here as Secretary of State for International Development talking about all the work that we want to do with other countries, I think we should reflect that no country in the world has really achieved true gender equality yet, and that includes the UK. And so in all of this work, Britain also is one of those countries that needs to keep on pushing ourselves to go further and faster on gender equality, and that's what we're going to do. We know that there are lots of people who aren't in this room who will still want to roll back progress, will regret the presence of Global Goal 5, and will want to step back from the commitments that we've all signed up to today in New York. I think it's up to those of us who are passionate about the prospects of women and girls to make sure that we never let that happen. And I've said so many times that if you're not winning this battle for improving the prospects for women and girls, you are losing it. But today we've had a massive step forward with Global Goal 5. And I think if we can commit to delivering on that, then we really will see the step change that we all want over the next 15 years. So thank you very much for coming to this event, and thank you for listening to me.
Thanks so much, Justine, and thanks for your leadership on the issue, and thanks also for that investment in evidence. I think everybody in the field knows that too often in the past we've relied on gut instincts in a way that we never would with commercial investments. So congratulations on that. Now for our next keynote, I'd like to invite Aneema Mohammed, who is an Assistant Secretary General of the UN and has been the Special Advisor to the Secretary General on post-2015 development planning. I think she hasn't slept for about the last 3 months with all the planning here, and we're thrilled to have her here today.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate having to come and speak about this huge, important initiative that says action begins today. So we didn't only just gavel the 17 goals. Somebody said we birthed them. I thought, well, is this IVF and we've got 17 kids? I mean, what is it? But Justine, thank you very much to the UK for this and to the partners who've put this together. But your passion right from the high-level panel when you came to support the PM, she really was talking about girls and women and empowerment then, and we weren't sure whether we'd get I think we always knew we'd get the goal, but not the detail that we got to the goal, and I think that was what was amazing from all the inputs. The ambition is because we opened up the process, and we really were genuine about what came in through the doors of civil society with different parts of different governments, because it wasn't just about the member states in New York, it was also capitals, and the evidence was overwhelming that we had to do something about this, and I think that helped a great deal. I've been thinking about what I was going to say, and my staff, who are absolutely great, I have the best team there is in the United Nations, and they put these wonderful TPs together for me, and I thought, right, this is not going to do it today. But what I did want to say is the real litmus test is going to be in the implementation. And you've talked so much about the what and the how is going to be so hard, challenging us to, first of all, think differently, because we've said to everyone it's a universal agenda, and right now we don't have the baseline to tell us where everyone is. So that's one of the major things we have to do, and thanks to the support to the Global Partnership for Data, because the data revolution it is a reality out in the outside world, but we've got to make it work for this agenda and really connect the dots for it, making sure that our institutions, and that's goal 16, work at the country level, but connect to technology and big data. So that part of it's going to be very real. But getting to our countries and really thinking about how we will inform these plans. And two things will happen. We'll get back and we want to know who's going to convene who. How are we going to join up together the way we did in the United Nations to shape this agenda? And what are we going to do now at the country level? And the UN is going to have its work cut out for it, because we may be in the driver's seat on development at the country level, but we have other donors. We have many, many more partners now. So being in the driving seat and thinking about the number of passengers you've got, and everyone has to be comfortable with a seatbelt. And there has to be that openness to want to listen, not to all you telling you where to go on the roadmap. We've got the roadmap. But really to help us and help countries inform policies and plans, which are there. Everyone in this room knows that they're working with someone's vision, someone's policy, and someone's plan. We need to integrate it and lift it. So my going back to Nigeria in the next couple of months is about seeing how this works in a country that's incredibly complicated. It goes 10 steps forward, and then we go like 50 back. And now we're trying to claw our way back to an agenda that gives us plans that work for everyone, everywhere, that really deal with our security issues. I keep speaking to the part of the country I come from and went to primary school and secondary school there. That's foundation. That's why I can do what I'm doing today. And we put girls in school. But somehow the exclusion, the inequality, the lack of strong institutions, climate change, all sort of made for the perfect storm, and then we have Boko Haram. And what we have is girls suffering at the end of that. So mine is to hopefully, with the new president and an agenda for change, and he gets change and he gets back our Chibok girls, but to work at the same time with making sure we address the root causes so that it never, ever happens again, not in Nigeria, not anywhere in the world. And I do think that this set of goals, and I think the focus on the gender goal here today, are really important to making that happen. Lastly, I'd just say the two things that we haven't really talked about. I see that the gender goal, if we talk about it today, think about it as a docking station for the other 16. And then also how this goal feeds the other 16. It has to be mutually reinforcing to make it work. Otherwise, we'll be reversing the gains a few years down the line. The one knot that we have not tied on this agenda is the accountability one, because we've still got indicators that are outstanding. We don't know what we're measuring yet or with what we are measuring. There's a lot of work gone into it. And I know the UK is chairing the work with the statistical commissions in the UN, and so I would really urge that we create the same ambition that we got in this agenda for the indicators, and that we really made sure that those indicators were not just for the development community, but that they applied to the business community, that they're informed by science, and that they can be understood at the country level, because that's also a big challenge as well, as to how to build the capacity to use it. So just take the opportunity to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and the work begins yesterday.
Thanks so much. That line about the burping the goals, I may steal that for a column. So it's such a great line. And your point about the need to, that the hard work begins now with implementation. I mean, that's the role of all of us here. That's sort of why we're doing that. And the test obviously is whether we can actually make sure that change happens in villages all around the world. So compliments on that. We'd now like to get some reaction and comments from some of you who are out here, who we've identified, and there'll be a mic visiting you. I'd like to ask you to comment for just a minute. And let me start with a special representative from the African Development Bank, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka.
Good evening. I think it's a special day for all of us. And I want, on behalf of the President of the African Development Bank, commit that we will, through the New Deal on Energy for Africa, its financing facility, empower women through the provision of clean cook stoves. Thank you.
Congratulations on that, and thank you for that. And next, I'd like to call on the Honorable Nana Oye-Lether, Minister of Women and Children's Affairs in Ghana.
Thank you very much. I have a personal story. 80 years ago, my grandma, who sells vegetables by a railway station, invested in education of my mother. And I am the end product. And as a minister for gender in Ghana, I commit to strengthen our legal and policy framework. Over the past 2.5 years, I've introduced 7 bills, including affirmative action, interstate succession, property rights of spouses, and a gender policy. But very importantly, I will empower young rural girls by creating safe environments free from gender-based violence so that they can complete their education like I did. So from today, change will happen, change will come, and together we should all effect this change with SDG goal number 5. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and what a testimony to the incredible returns from investing in girls. Now I'd like to invite President Luis Alberto Moreno from the Inter-American Development Bank.
Well, thank you very much, and it's an honor and pleasure to be here, and want to thank DFID and Justine for this invitation. You know, Latin America has gone through many transformations. It's only 25 years ago that most countries in Latin America were ruled by the military. Today, 40% of Latin Americans are governed by women. That's a pretty good example for other places of the world. And so there's been a lot of advance, but still the fundamental problems remain. And the fundamental problems remain in areas of wage gaps, in the areas of entrepreneurship, in the areas of access to finance and to credit, and more importantly, access to public services that make the life of women so much easier and better. And these are all of the areas in which the Inter-American Development Bank has been working, and is really in the frontier, and the frontier of learning and testing many of these ideas I'd like to invite DFID to look closely at some of this work that can help you going forward. And our pledge is that by the year 2019, we will have 185,000 women to provide access to credit to them. And we hope that by leveraging resources and in the spirit of cooperation is the way to get there. I'm sorry it took probably a minute and a half more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to invite Vice President Stephen Groff of the Asian Development Bank.
Thank you. Well, consistent with many of the other speakers, our research shows that despite the tremendous gains that we've seen in education across the region and women's access or girls' access to education, still persistent gaps remain in wages, persistent gaps remain in opportunity, and we still have social and cultural norms that need to be overcome in the region. ADB's commitment is that a few years ago, we targeted 40% of our projects to have mainstreamed gender equality. We've reached that target several years in a row, and we're increasing that target to 45% this year. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Congratulations on that. Now let me invite Ambassador Natasha Stott-Despoja, Australia's Ambassador for Women and Girls.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And Nicholas, thank you for encouraging us to be specific beyond TalkFest. So it gives me great pleasure today, as Australia's Ambassador for Women and Girls, to highlight 3 specific initiatives designed to promote the economic empowerment of women and girls. Firstly, a $15 million commitment to the World Bank's Umbrella Facility for Gender Equality. We're investing in the IFC's Get to Equal project. As many of you know, that project will advance women's contribution to the private sector as employees, as entrepreneurs, as well as business leaders, and will expand opportunities for women entrepreneurs in supply chains and distribution networks. Secondly, we're providing $1.5 million to assist women who own small businesses in the Indian Ocean region to enhance their export competitiveness. And thirdly, it gives me great pleasure to launch a report today by the Women's World Banking, Women-Owned SMEs in Southeast Asia, Access to Finance. That's funded by Australia. This report will actually provide practical recommendations to address the credit gap facing women-owned SMEs. Economic empowerment, third priority but one of my 3 priorities as Ambassador for Women and Girls. I really encourage other nations to consider the establishment of comparable positions. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your leadership on that. And now I'd like to invite Lillian Cumin, the Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation from the Netherlands.
Hi, thank you. Good to see all of you here. It's a wonderful day. We made it. Global Goal 5 is there, and it's there to stay. Women's leadership needs women's organizations, and women's organizations need funding. And we will provide that funding. For the next 5 years, we will provide $100 million to women's organizations that will help us to get to Global Goal 5. Thanks.
Thanks so much, and compliments to that. Now we're going to have a little discussion here looking at some of the ways in which we can have partnerships or private sector involvement in trying to empower women. And I think the thought behind that is that when business is brought in, one has sustainability and scalability, and in a way that often is not true if one relies solely on nonprofits. And yet there's also, I think, a sense that this is an area that is underperformed, and that there's a lot of talk about corporate social responsibility, but so far it hasn't fully delivered. Here we have some great examples. We have Akansha Hazari, who is founder and CEO of Mpani, which is a customer loyalty scheme in India that it's a little like a airline loyalty scheme. It allows low-income consumers to earn points that they spend and redeem on goods and services. We have Saif Rashid, CEO of Jita Bangladesh, which is a door-to-door distribution network with 3,000 underprivileged women. Dan Hinckley is president of the Gap Foundation, and Senior VP of Global Sustainability for the GAP. He oversees the GAP Foundation's global community investments and heads the global sustainability practice. And Michelle Nunn is President and CEO of CARE, which has kind of led the way in partnering with corporations and using business models to try to fight poverty and provide employment. So, Akansha, let me start with you. If you can describe a little bit how Mpani actually does all the things we're talking about.
Sure. So Mpani is the first, what we say, low-income loyalty program focused on kind of offline consumers and unorganized retail or offline retail. But the vision of Mpani is actually to use loyalty as a vehicle to bring data into the space. And I think a few of the speakers have spoken about the importance of data. And so we're using loyalty as a vehicle to bring this offline economy online, whether it's consumers, low-income consumers, or unorganized retail, and then use that data to innovate new products and services for this underserved segment, like credit scoring. So, you know, having a real transaction history for the first time about consumers via loyalty actually allows us to develop, for example, credit scores, both on the consumer side and unorganized retail. The long-term vision for us is, can we use innovative business models actually to bring data insights into a hugely overlooked segment and use technology as well, and then basically innovate new products and services to bridge service gaps in low-income segments, both in India and in the future in other emerging markets.
And if people want to learn more, the website is?
www.mpani.com.
Okay, and Mpani, as you see, has the double A there.
Yes.
Saif, if you can tell us a little bit about, you know, you're on the front lines, and to what extent, when one's talking about empowering women, is there a risk of a backlash from men? And how do we empower women without creating that backlash in ways that undermine our efforts?
So, yeah, surely. Jita Bangladesh is actually working to empower women through giving them job opportunity to sell door-to-door different kinds of product like health, hygiene, nutrition, agricultural inputs, and technology. So in technology, we are focusing like solar lamps and cooker stoves, things like this. So when we do that, and I'll go back a bit of a history of how we started, because it was a project of CARE. And CARE was, I think, was one of the organizations which was involving men for the first time in terms of working with women, because that's the only thing you can do in a context like in Bangladesh, where you have social, political, and cultural barriers to empower women. So what we have tried to do is to give income opportunity in a sustainable way, obviously engaging with men. And the challenge is, like, I'll share a bit of a story. Like, for example, when you started working in a village and working with a poor woman to really ask them whether you would be interested to join this program for income opportunity, a man came to me and said that, who are you to empower women? Because only Allah has the power to empower women. And so these kind of issues you need to navigate. And we have took this opportunity from CARE to learn those kind of techniques. And then what we have done is actually made those more efficient in terms of navigating through when we are growing. Last 3 years, we have grown like threefold. We started with 1,000 women. We are now 3,000. We have also increased the income of the woman, almost doubled. Now our focus is to like doubling more. So in next 3 years, we will triple the income of the woman. That's the main challenge, I think, for us. But for men, I think they're now engaging with a lot of education that need to be taken to them.
And if you want to learn more about Jita's model, which truly is pretty extraordinary, then you can not only go to the web, but we also give them a shout out in our book, A Path Appears. So, I wanted to ask Dan about this question of how we get major corporations in on this game. There's such potential here, and yet I look at major companies and I see them often talking a good game, but kind of dropping the ball on actually doing very much in CSR. Even the tech companies, Google, Apple, Facebook. And so I wondered how you make the business case to American companies that this is something that isn't just a nice thing to do, but is actually, something that their boards will appreciate.
That's great. I want to talk about a program we implemented in 2007. It's called PACE. And it's a program that provides really significant education, comprehensive education. We started it in our supply chain in garment factories and then have since expanded the program into communities. And one of the things we were seeing in our supply chain is if you go into most garment factories, what you'll see, the workforce is about 80+% women. And then if you look at the factory management, supervisory positions, it's almost exclusively male. And so we were seeing this and saying, so what do you do about that? So we started this initial impetus was how do we affect change, potentially make the management representation more representative of the actual workforce. And so we started off on this journey, and one of the things we were very clear about at the beginning is that we're not the experts in this, and we needed to pull in experts. And there's been a lot of discussion around data, and one of the first and one of our best decisions was to involve the International Center for Research on Women to come in and basically say, let's get a really clear picture of what your baseline data looks like today. How are women feeling about their lives? How are they feeling about their careers? What are their ambitions, so on and so forth? And then can we affect change over time? And let's really monitor this and evaluate it. So they were our initial evaluation partner. We brought in another partner in India, the Swasti Health Resource Center, to help us with the design of the program. And then CARE has been a huge implementing partner throughout the globe as we've gone forward. A couple things that we've seen, and why this is important, I'll get to, but data is super important as you're trying to go in front of the boardroom and actually sort of make your case. So here's the data. And I actually think that when you're implementing these kind of programs, for programs to be sustained, they actually, you should embark these programs and with good intentions and hopefully trying to get good social outcomes from these programs. But you also should be linking it to business performance as well. And so what we did through the ICRW evaluations, we looked at every conceivable thing you could look at as far as worker self-esteem, feelings of self-worth, promotion rates in the facilities. How much were we retaining the workforce? How often were they absent? So on and so forth. The results have been amazing. You invest in education and the results have been truly amazing. Then we actually looked at the flip side. What happens when all of those things are actually working and you're seeing those good outcomes? What happens with business? So we actually measured impact on productivity, and the reality is that productivity has significantly been increased in these facilities that are actually implementing this. I was recently in India, and one of our suppliers, I walked into a meeting with him, and he pointed to me and he said, the PACE program is actually good for my business. And it was almost like a little bit surprised at the beginning, like I wasn't sure. And now that I've actually looked at it and I've seen the results, it's not only good for my workplace, and we're seeing good results, but we're actually seeing really good business results as well. When you put that case in front of anyone, I think any development partner, or any business partner, I think what we have seen is that then you've made your case for scaling.
And Michelle, you're also very much on the front lines with Gap, but also with a number of other companies. And I mean, you've moved from sort of traditional model to one that very much engages corporations, and a Walmart, I believe, as well. So I wondered why you have done that and what the lesson is for other international NGOs.
Well, I think in order to reach the kind of aspirational but also I think achievable goals that we've embraced, I think we have to have a multiplicity of partnerships. And we've heard from small and large and social enterprises and rural and urban. And I think CARE has a unique role in finding the capacity to bridge some of these partnerships and to create also bringing in government and working with organizations like DFID and reaching scale. So for instance, one of the things that we are committed to is 30 million new empowered women economically. And we will only reach that by creating different kinds of partnerships than we traditionally have just done in terms of implementing programs. We have to create advocacy partnerships so that we are really, again, multiplying our impact. We also have to use the capacity of business. And I think really holistically looking at business, not just from the perspective of pure financial resources, but supply chain capacity, employee engagement, consumer-facing opportunities. And so I think, that's I think, the heart of some of the changes that CARE's been going through. Not only how do we get the group of women to participate in a savings and loan program, how do we multiply that to 5 million, which is now what we have around the world? How do we take the lessons from Bangladesh and apply them in Kenya? And how do we put in place some of the partnerships that will enable us to create the construct in which these programs can not only thrive, but be connected to the private sector and commercial banking and have the next level of opportunity? So I think that's what's at the heart of CARE is this capacity and interest in partnership.
Well, thanks so much for that. There's so many more questions I want to ask each of you, but we're going to turn into pumpkins. So thanks very much, and I'd like to call on several people here in the audience who the microphone's again going to go around, and if you can offer your thoughts on where we take it from here. First, I'd like to invite Marcel Nubbins, the Global Vice President for Social Impact at Unilever.
Hello, good afternoon, and we are delighted that we are celebrating here today together. So at Unilever, we expanded our Unilever Sustainable Living Plan to really recognize and incorporate women's economic empowerment. We set up an ambitious commitment of empowering 5 million women by 2020 in our operations across our extended supply chain and in the communities where we operate. And we are doing so by focusing on the rights, on the skills to succeed, and on the opportunities. We set up 4 very ambitious strategic goals: building a gender-balanced organization, recognizing that having a balanced organization better reflects the increasing participation of women, and certainly the predominantly female role of consumers. The second goal is promoting women's safety in the communities where we operate. Simply put, women cannot lean in, cannot participate if they fear for their safety. We also believe that we really need to drive an organization and business that eradicate any type of discrimination. The third is enhancing access to training and skills, whether it is finance, agronomy, business skills. Women often are left behind in their learning, so we are really focusing on scaling up. And finally, expanding economic opportunities in our supply chain. Access to funding, access to knowledge, to markets, not only entrepreneurship, but also employability. And we have designated opportunity for women as our transformational business growth strategy. You heard Paul Polman yesterday say it's not just a cost, it's an opportunity for business really to advance this. We are taking a 360 degrees approach. We want it from the innovation of our products to women in the farm, in the shop, in the factories, everywhere. And simply put, we want women to do well, to earn more, to speak out, to have the opportunity to participate actively. And we are really excited about this. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Let me invite a comment from Whitney, the International Executive Director of Oxfam.
Thank you very much. Oxfam welcomes the leadership of UN Women under Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka and the UK government and Minister Greening in committing to women's economic empowerment, which is essential for women's rights and to achieve the full ambition of the Sustainable Development Goals. In our experience around the world, women's economic empowerment is only achieved when supported by changes across women's lives, across all sectors: social, political, economic, and personal spheres. But women's excessive and unequal responsibility for unpaid care work cuts across all these spheres, prevents them from realizing their rights, and is a barrier to economic equality. I know this. I was a girl child carrying water from the river. Oxfam's We Care program works in 10 countries to address unpaid care work. So far, this program has successfully built evidence on the heavy and unequal care work done by women, promoted positive social norms on care, and advocated for investments in infrastructure and services which support care. We are delighted today to announce the scale-up and expansion of our We Care program and our commitment to the call to action. We look forward to working with others represented here and in this summit to work on this agenda of addressing women's unfair burden of unpaid care work going forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And now we'll hear from Tracy Clark, the Executive Management Group of Standard Chartered.
Thank you. As a bank that operates in many developing markets around the world, particularly in Asia, in Africa, and the Middle East, women's empowerment is a really important issue for us. And it seems very opportune to talk about our goal program on this very special day. It is a coincidence, but we launched our goal program in 2006, and the word goal was really used because we use sport as a means to bring girls together and provide financial education and life skills training over a 9-month period. And I'd like to make 3 commitments today. So for our goal program, we have an objective to reach 600,000 girls by the end of 2018 with our program. We have already made about 170,000, so some way to go, but very committed to the overall objective. The second commitment is when our girls complete their 9-month program, we're going to work with our customers and our suppliers, and indeed within our own organisation, to try and find as many of these girls some work experience and or paid entry-level opportunities. And the third commitment is to really focus on ensuring the programme has impact. One measure of impact is the extent to which these girls do find real opportunities for work. But we need to work a little bit harder to really ensure that our programme is having impact in a broader sense. So very proud of what we've done so far in our work. We know that almost 70% of our girls walk away feeling they've acquired leadership skills to influence their own destiny and the communities in which they're returning. Second, they feel that they have more knowledge and experience about financial education, for example, writing a budget. And thirdly, that these girls feel far more educated around health, sexual and reproduction education, and feel far more equipped to avoid unwanted pregnancy. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Let me invite a comment from Laura Gitman, the Vice President from the Network Business for Social Responsibility.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this very action-oriented dialogue. As a mission-driven membership organization who works with more than 250 of the world's largest and most influential companies, BSR is pleased to commit to increase women's empowerment globally by mobilizing business action to support women to participate in, benefit from, and contribute to the global economy. We'll provide companies with tools and resources to enhance the impact of their women's empowerment programs, including the launch of a new collaborative platform. We will also continue to empower low-income women working in global supply chains through our existing collaboration, the HER Project, which provides workplace health and financial education and training. We know that in some countries, up to 80% of the workers in global supply chains are women, and that these women contribute up to 90% of their income to their families, to health, to education, to nutrition. In order to further promote these women, I'm pleased to announce today that our Her Project will be expanding. In partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and leading global buyers, we will promote financial inclusion through a new program for the digitization of wage payments, as well as expansion of financial education in Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh over the next 4 years. We're very excited to make this commitment, and we believe it will promote financial inclusion for low-income working women at a larger scale. Thank you.
Bravo on that. And now I'd like to call on Bea Perez, the Global Head of Sustainability for Coca-Cola.
Thank you. And so I just want to say I was thrilled to hear what the panel was talking about today around partnerships, because in 2010, Coca-Cola set the goal to empower 5 million women by 2020. And I'm proud to say that through many partnerships, whether it's CARE, DFID, Inter-American Development Bank, and of course UN Women, many, many more that I can't even mention here today, we're at 865,000 women economically empowered in 52 countries. And we're really excited about that because we know that it's not one size fits all. There's solutions that are needed based on the local issues and barriers that these women are facing. And so it really does require civil society, business, government to work hand in hand. And the call to action is I'd like to see more companies do what Unilever did recently, which is come out and announce their own 5 million women. I'd love to make the challenge to every corporate person sitting in this room to raise your numbers. Let's all each do 5 million. We'll get to CARE's 30 million faster if we do that together. So thank you for letting us be here and be a part of this journey. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and I'm sure glad I didn't have to call on any of the companies that I'd earlier named as having dropped the ball, so I'm relieved. We're going to have a little panel discussion, and I'd like to invite to the stage first Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the Executive Director of UN Women, also a UN Undersecretary General, and previously a South African politician, very much a leader in this effort to empower women globally. And then Secretary of State for International Development, Justine Greening. You are old friends now. And Rona Craddock works as a solicitor in Newcastle. She volunteered in Zimbabwe, leading sessions with youth groups on entrepreneurship, HIV/AIDS, gender equality, and since returning has been an active climate change advocate. Rona? We want to engage young people, and we like to think that there are 150 million young people watching right now. That's an attempt at being data-driven. And now, the number is totally made up, but there is this enthusiasm among young people for getting engaged. So I'd like to ask each of you what your 1-minute message is for young people out there who are watching, that what can they do to actually help engage in delivering on this agenda for 2030?
A lot of young people in almost every part of the world use technology and are techno-savvy. That's one thing that is their distinct competitive advantage. I'd like to encourage young people to see technology as a tool of trade, beyond using it to socialize and to interact in the manner in which we normally see young people doing. And of course, I'd like to, as I think you were saying, to get tech companies to raise their game a little bit, to meet these young people everywhere, because there's capacity to reach so many at a go and to support them. And of course, government, let us invest in education of girls and women, because that's the closest thing to a silver bullet. Their capacity to be effective entrepreneurs and to participate in the economy and to address all the other things that the goals are addressed, significantly compromised if we do not address the issue of girls' education and lifelong learning for women. Thank you.
Justine.
Great. I think my 1-minute pitch would be 3 messages. One, when we held the youth summit in London a couple of weekends ago, which was incredible. We reached about 75 million people on social media. But I think what it shows is that young people can really be advocates for change. So the network that you can tap into is incredible, and you can be part of how we get this message out and change opinions. Second message for me is young people can actually be the change themselves. So they can be out on the ground helping us deliver some of these programs and be part of how they're successful. You only have to look at the work of young people in Sierra Leone, out in communities, talking to people about how they could stay safe, to see that that went well beyond advocacy to actually helping us deliver this. And my third message to young people is don't wait until you're 30. You can start doing all this stuff now. Don't wait until you get older before you start trying to shape the world that you want. Start doing it today.
Thank you. And Rona, on this panel, you're the authority on youth. So what can young people do to deliver on this agenda?
Yeah, I mean, to young people, I would say if you see something wrong, change it, do something, be active. Don't limit yourself, be ambitious, and just go out and do things, because there will no doubt be other people who feel the same as you and who will be inspired by you. But actually what I want to take this opportunity with all of you here to say is, when you're, having these conversations, I work with young people. I see young people who are actually already doing this, and they're doing it all over the world. And yes, we need to inspire more and more young people to get involved, because these global goals will not be anything unless young people are behind them and are making them happen. But yeah, young people, we can make up 50% of the world. So when we're talking about women's empowerment, yes, women make up 50% of the world, but young people make up 50% of the world too. So young women are a key demographic that you need to engage with to make this happen. So when you're having these conversations, yes, talk about these commitments, and they're absolutely brilliant commitments, and today is such a positive day. But also see young women as partners, and look at how you can really work with young people and young women and engage us in allowing us to really lead on delivering these goals. And I would say, if I was going to say one thing that I would ask you all to do, is to, we've got these incredibly ambitious goals now, and you're making amazing commitments. But, to governments, to world leaders, when you go home, or even before, as of Monday, start having conversations about how, when you're making your national implementation plans, you will engage women, young women, diverse groups of women in creating these indicators and these plans to put it in practice, because we want to be leading with you.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much to each of you. And now I'd like to invite Phumzile to offer some closing remarks to the group. Tie it all up.
Cumin, a bit early. I was in another high panel. We were expecting you. We were missing you in that high panel. And I want to start by thanking you, Justine, for the work that you do, not just for today's participation, but the work that you do. And thank also all the partners that collaborated with us to put this day together. CARE, for the investment that you made to make this possible, and Coke. And Aneema, in her absence, I was able to see her as she was leaving. Thank you so much for the contribution that she made, and hopefully she brought the goals to life to many of you. And tonight, there's been so many concrete commitments that were made from a variety of stakeholders, from development banks, governments, corporations, civil society, young people with incredible ideas. And this is the way the goals are going to be achieved, when all the stakeholders come together and do it together. because creating this new agenda is not about one institution or sector leading. It is about much greater and much smarter integration. What has emerged from tonight's discussion is that alternative economic agenda is urgently needed to build economies that work for both men and women. That we do need to address the macroeconomic policy that must support an economy that will work with the goals. The current economy and the macroeconomic paradigm will not support the goals. So one of the standalone activity that has to be addressed is what to do with the macroeconomic paradigm that dominates our world and our country. We also have to make sure that we address some of the unaccounted for distortions in our economy. A lot was said about unpaid care work. That is a whole area of the economy that is very specific to women, which can be turned around into an economy that is not a burden to women and societies and communities, but into a dynamic area where more women get employed, where we could, for instance, if you look at childcare, we could support early learning in the process, and we could be releasing a lot of women to go out to work. And of course, there is also a need for us to think about investing in women and girls related initiatives, because our own observation as UN Women is that in many countries which have got excellent national development plans that are targeted to women and girls, usually the allocation in those plans, which have been costed, have gone through lengthy cabinet committees. I'm looking at a former cabinet minister shaking her head. And then when it comes into allocating money, the rule of thumb is about 10% is actually made available. And therefore, we actually kill the prospect of success just by the amount of money that we make available for the programs that are targeted for women and girls. I always say that UN Women is a classical example because we're a micro-enterprise of the UN. And that is, if you go to national level, the same. At regional level, the regional organizations have the same. You go to universities, the money that is allocated for things that have to do with women, gender studies, and so on. So there's the structural mindset shift that has to do about how much it costs to work with women. Gender equality is not cheap and it's not free. And I think what you were saying about also having to make the business case to private sector, that is important. But as we make that case, we also must not forget the rights approach that we have also to do because it's the right thing to do. Men are not running the economy because they are doing something great. It is because it's their right to enter into the economy. With women, we first have to justify that if you have women, the economy will grow and this will happen and this will happen. That can't always be the starting point. It's an important fact to make. It's important to collect data that justifies that. But I think we must also make sure that we don't go to the extreme when we are making that argument. UN Women also would like that we focus on trade agreements that we are signing and the extent to which they recognize or not recognize the fact that women exist in those countries and how the economies of those countries, of the countries that we trade with, affect women. In some cases, trade agreements can actually help to correct the distortions between countries, between people within a country, and between men and women. And I think the same can be said also about ODA, which is a very dynamic instrument for supporting gender equality. I think it's Australia that has got a very dynamic approach to ODA, which actually expecting about 80% of its ODA to have to benefit and impact on women. Can you just imagine if countries actually did that seriously and significantly in the manner in which they use the ODA, the impacts? But I think then our responsibility is to monitor and to support governments to be in a position to do that, because sometimes they also don't know where to start in order to achieve that. So the 2030 economy must be an economy that addresses all of this. It also has to be an economy that takes into account that there is such a significant number of women who are displaced, who live in conflict, who will live in a conflict zone for the rest of their lives, who will also give to the next generation of their children the same conditions that the conflict conflict areas generate for women. International financial institutions and the private sector are amongst the key players that drive the economy, that shape the daily lives and experiences of all employees. Their role is therefore also critical together and separately to change the way these economies work. For instance, everyone who's an employer has to have zero tolerance to unequal pay if they are part of this agenda. You cannot have 2030 agenda ambitions and pay unequal pay, or even not know what the situation is in the company. I think you cannot be part of the 2030 agenda and not think about paternity leave and paternity care and how that changes the dynamics and the capacity for women. You cannot be supporting 2030 and not be concerned about the motherhood penalty that ILO talks about, which impacts women when they are unable to get the support that they do when they have children. We, as you know, many of you know that UN Women's mandate, we are a sort of a funny animal in the UN because we have a normative policy-making mandate to facilitate policies that cuts across. I think the one that is fresh in all our minds is indeed the SDGs, because I think many of you will remember when we had the zero draft, which we designed, which we drafted and we took around the world, we lobbied, we worked with civil society, who also inputted on the zero draft, but to actually make it into a dynamic document and have a buy-in of the magnitudes that we now have, it meant all of our 1,800 workers in UN Women worked on this at some point and knocked in different doors to sell and to argue and to shape. And then we made sure that throughout the negotiations, we were there, we were working with member states, we were working with civil society, people were not sleeping until we got to, we were revising everything. We were from commas to full stop. That, I think, is probably the big bulk of our work here in New York. So the normative is very important because in the implementing of this, we actually have an impact to women and girls all over the world at a go. And that is the space that we occupy, the convening power that we have. But we're also responsible for coordination across the UN. So we work with all and everybody in the UN. We have the programmatic responsibility, which we are just consolidating now in building. And I think we're the only one who has got that kind of mandate, and of course, advocacy as well. And I saw my deputy who works with programs, who, if he starts, he won't stop, so I won't even ask him to say something about his program. But what we're trying to do is to lift flagship programs that can actually change the system. The wonderful thing that I've had today is just the number of people that are doing exceptionally exciting things that we need to consolidate so that we are not different retailers. We are a system that is actually changing. Because I'm talking to a lot of people in the private sector, UN Women, the space we occupy is that we're a wholesaler. We cannot actually do all of the activities, but through retailers we are able to have a coordinating role so that when we all move together, 1, 2, 3, the thing changes. Whereas if people work individually and unfragmented, we don't work as quick as possible the impacts that we can make. And we'd like to continue to be in that space, but at the same time, to have a dipstick in some areas where we think we can provide, we can use all of our mandates, coordinating, integration, normative, coordination across, as well as program to change the system. For instance, climate smart agriculture, which is an area that we're interested in and we're working in, and the countries that we're working in there. It's one of our flagship programs where we're hoping to make a difference that we can replicate in a number of countries, starting from the laws to the implementation and so on. The care economy is a big thing for us because we think it is so important. So one of our flagship programs is focusing on the care program. The state as a market, because we are an intergovernmental state. The states make us, own us, but we're given birth to by civil society. So we can never be separated from our mother. Our first language, our mother tongue was civil society, but we're made up, we're an intergovernmental body. So working in those areas where we can bring the state on board is actually very important because of the close and the dynamic relationship we have with government. So we're looking forward to be sharing the work that we're going to be doing on flagship programs. We've used the space and the area of engaging men and boys as an important part to drive economic empowerment, because men rather than boys, are key holders and pen holders in most of our economy. So just an example, if you are part of He for She and you're a big company, we expect a big commitment. Unilever, for instance, has stepped up to that and made very specific commitment, including removing the glass ceiling and investing in some of the activities of UN women. Vodafone, as one of our partners, has undertaken an amazingly far-reaching maternity, restructuring of their maternity and offering, I think, a very steep curve for other companies to follow up and to address this motherhood penalty. And Twitter, who's one of our partners, is looking at the pipeline of creating tech entrepreneurs amongst women. We've got countries as well that are He for She leading countries. A country like Malawi has decided it wants to dedicate itself into the girl early marriages as a critical area. Or Iceland, which wants to leverage the fact that it has so many high indicators for gender equality to raise to the top to become the first country to achieve gender equality, so as to put pressure on everybody. So watch Iceland, here they come. So we've given countries that are He for She really tough indicators and responsibility. And then of course we also have universities that are also He for She universities, and those universities also have adopted very specific, from scholarships for girls, for STEM, and scholarships for men for social work, so that we can create more men in that space. We are active in the G20 and the G7, very important institutions, and we hope that they can also be trend centers and help to change the direction of the economies, both in their countries, but also in the countries that they invest in. So tonight is really about just the number of things that we can do, but I hope it is also about giving us a glimpse into what we could do together and why we need to consolidate so that we can decisively work smart, turn the agenda, and make sure that in 2030, we're not standing here saying the same things. We think on the 27th, we have convened heads of state, because we're also talking about delegating upwards. We're delegating to boys, getting them take responsibility. We're reaching out to young people. We are reaching out to traditional leaders, but we also are asking our leaders to be the leaders also here. So we are excited that 80 heads of state and heads of government have responded, and each one of them will be sharing with us what you're going to do going forward, and we'll produce a book of commitments only featuring the commitments that the countries have made, so that all of us can monitor how they take the matters forward. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Phumzile, for holding everybody's feet to the fire. And, indeed, I think the one theme that shone through was the need to make this not just a year of rhetoric and goals, but of actually starting a process of achievement. So now it really falls upon all of you, whether you're here in the room or watching. If you have comment cards, leave them here. Please sign the call to action, either online or there. You can sign the board on the 11th floor. A special thanks to the hosts, DFID, UN Women, and CARE, to all the partners. A special huge thanks to our physical host, to the Ford Foundation, for providing this beautiful space. And now please do stay for the reception that's going to follow upstairs. Justine Greening will be speaking there, and we'll see you all at CSW, and we'll review where we're going. Thanks so much for coming.